I'm here with Vikram Kumar, who's the resident representative for the International Finance Corporation in Myanmar. I'd like to thank you very much for taking some time to meet with us. So I'd like to discuss first, some of the more, prominent projects that you're working on here now. Of course, in terms of the financing of major infrastructure. Now, some of these investments have attracted significant criticism, largely among them being the partnership with FMI Yoma on the new hotel development at the train station. I just want to ask how extending finance to these projects fits into the IFC's mandate to reduce poverty and to make socially responsible investments that benefit SMEs and people lower down.
The first question, to tackle it head on, I think we did our own integrity due diligence, and we're very particular about the quality of the sponsor we're working with, and this involves extensive checks, and we believe, based on what we've done and confirmation from on all the sources that we have, that the Yoma SPA group is a group that would be a good potential client for the IFC in Myanmar. We're focusing on Yoma's projects in particular. If you look at the bank itself, which is one of the key areas, our engagement with the Yoma Bank is actually extremely comprehensive. It's not, first of all, it's not what you're looking at immediately is basically a $10 million engagement to start with, of which $5 million would be a trade line, similar to what we've already given to Myanmar Oriental Bank. So it's not unique to Yoma. Something we've already done, a first with MOB. And we want to do the same with Yoma Bank. So when you look at the kind of support we're giving to those banks, it's not just the investment support, it's comprehensive advisory, because we honestly believe local banks need a huge amount of capacity building. If you're living in Myanmar, you compare the quality of banking service you get in Myanmar vis-a-vis any country in the world, it has a really long way to go.
I think that, of course, there's no disagreement that SME financing is a huge issue in this country, and it's something that definitely needs capacity building. However, one area of criticism that's been leveled against these sorts of programs is a question of accountability and oversight, because according to World Bank guidelines, Yoma is considered a financial institution partner, and what I have taken that to learn is that the reporting requirements and the due diligence standards, once they've passed certain hurdles to get that clearance, it means that they're not subject to the same kind of scrutiny and oversight as perhaps might be other projects, other investment partners that are graded lower for different projects. Could you explain a little bit about how, the grading system for projects, and also how and why you believe that FMI Yoma in particular is deserving of that level of trust?
Okay, so I think on the FI categorization, it's a financial institution. There's an FI1 and FI2, and FI1 categorization is for financial intermediaries which have extensive exposure to project finance, corporate, long-term corporate loans, where you expect there to be a significant environmental and social impact on the sub-projects or sub-clients. So if a bank is doing project finance transactions, long-term corporate lending, then the risk on the loan portfolio on the ENS, environmental and social side, is substantial. It gets graded as 1. FI2 is lower because we see that the on-lending operations are primarily in the SME space, which is short-term working capital which is the kind of financing that Yoma Bank is doing. In no possible way are the reporting requirements and the supervision requirements any different. What we expect from Yoma is in fact an environmental and social management system which is watertight, which addresses all the ENS risks which are there in the lending portfolio. If tomorrow they were to potentially start doing any form of long-term lending or project finance activities which we would characterize as high risk, for sure they would need to comply with our performance standards. And it is irrespective of the categorization. The level of reporting and the level of supervision will be extremely stringent, especially in a country like Myanmar. We are very cognizant that we need to be very careful on that. So there is no difference, and I would like to assure people that no such relaxation of standards is envisaged by an FI2 categorization.
And yet, the IFC, there's been some projects in other parts of the world where you've partnered with institutions and granted them FI2 status, and that subsequently led to issues like land grabbing and kind of other violations that are not in keeping with the World Bank's own guidelines, due to a lack of oversight, perhaps kind of an overconfidence in the ability of these institutions to perform. And you're dealing with a company that profited extensively, if not directly, but certainly it's very difficult to be a company involved in development and property management in Myanmar without running up against some sort of land confiscation in whatever past, certainly throughout the 1990s. So how can you be sure that the activities that you're conducting with your partners, be them Yoma or anybody else, really, I mean, does this in some way legitimate the crimes of the past, in the sense of there are still these outstanding land issues, and by even if you do have comprehensive standards, what does that really mean in terms of displacement, rising property values, cost of living?
The nature of the engagement with the bank is comprehensive. We think there is sufficient control from our and sufficient oversight from our end that we do not believe there will be significant ENS risk in the portfolio. Now, coming back to the issue of land, which is reflective in the other operations, right? You say land is fundamental for real estate, land is fundamental for industry, agriculture, everything. Land is fundamental to any form of business enterprise in Myanmar. So we recognize that land is a controversial issue. If we do a project with Yoma on the land side, and it involves significant amount of land resources, then it will get categorized as category A for sure. And if with the categorization A comes a full set of standards and a full set of checks in terms of how that land was acquired, whether it was acquired properly, not acquired properly, and if there are issues that emerge that lead us to believe that the land was not acquired in the proper way, then the IFC will not be able to finance a project. I would not, and I can say this as the head of the IFC in Myanmar, be comfortable doing projects in Myanmar, which we see as category A, meaning high environmental and social risk, without consulting with civil society. We think it's an integral part of doing business in Myanmar, and anything which is high risk is potentially highly developmental also, and it's important for us to drive a balance between the two.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So let me just ask you a little bit about the landmark project in particular, the Shangri-La loan. My question on that front is, obviously these are very substantial amounts of money that are going in. I mean, $80 million for the Shangri-La expansion is pretty. It's a substantial amount of money. In fact, it's almost the same as the national education budget. So my question is, how is that if the IFC's mandate is poverty reduction and growth to that extent, how is something like that, how does that promote poverty reduction?
I think on the first aspect, we as an institution strongly believe that hotels and tourism is fundamental to job creation. Just to give you an example, Shangri-La and Landmark potentially, we've not yet signed with Landmark yet, but when it does get to board and if we eventually sign, these two projects together would create more than 1,500 permanent jobs, of which 60% will be women, and almost 3,000 temporary jobs for during the construction phase. When we talk about democracy dividend, we talk about people actually having jobs, people having enough money to feed their families. So if you look at job creation, the job creation of hotels and tourism is unmatched by any other industries. Hotels and tourism represent 260 million jobs in the world, just to give you a flavor. And all the studies we've done have led us to believe that the trickle-down effect on the supply chain, the job creation potential of hotels is very important for Myanmar in particular.
But I think that there's a question of, and I think you're absolutely correct in that tourism is a major could be a major revenue source for this country if it's properly developed. When you have a major company that like Shangri-La or like Yoma that has extensive access to international finance, it makes me wonder why they're reliant on IFIs to finance these. If they could really float this on an open market, why are they not doing that? And also, that also leads to the question of, could these by saying that, fine, you're bringing in a lot of money on the high end, which is going into the bank accounts of one or two people, essentially, and then, of course, that will trickle down. But does that not risk exacerbating existing inequalities within this society and within this economy?
Why would a Shangri-La or a Yoma use somebody like the IFC if they could get commercial lending? They would not.
Commercially viable if they can't get lending on, because these, of course, they have access to international. These are listed companies.
Yes, they do not have access to international long-term hard currency loans in Myanmar. It is not available as a product. The IFC Shangri-La loan was the first hard currency US dollar loan ever done to a Myanmar company, ever. Just see the value of actually creating a loan precedence which has not been done before. The approvals,
sure.
This hear me out. But if, for example, Shangri-La or the Yoma Bank could raise money from a Singaporean bank or ex-bank in Myanmar, they would have done it. The reality is it's not available. Project financing, the landmark project is the first project financing deal being done in Myanmar. It's not being done.
Sure.
So you are creating precedence in terms of the nature of the financing you're doing, and this kind of long-term financing is not available. It's not available in the market. So our additionality, as we describe it, our role is also to make sure that the country gets exposed to best standards in terms of long-term finance. The next few projects that you will see from us will be with wholly owned local entrepreneurs. We are moving in that direction. In fact, at this point in time, I can share with you, we've been mandated on 12 transactions.
Sorry?
We've been mandated by clients 12 transactions, right?
Within the hospitality?
No, this is all of it, right? So the article that was out in the newspaper a few weeks back referred to us as we doing 3 out of 5 transactions. And actually the number is much larger.
But this is also, again, I think, and this is my understanding from what you're telling me, is that you hope to have a trickle-down effect in terms of employment, in terms of spreading the wealth, I guess, in a sense. Is that accurate?
Of course.
But of course, I mean, the IFC has come under intense criticism in many different contexts around the world. That in doing so, that doesn't happen, that the Washington consensus is dead, that Reaganomics doesn't work, and that the trickle-down effect is something that really has to be managed. And in a place like Myanmar, where you already have immense income inequality, to be extending massive amounts of financing to people that are already at the top of the ladder will have a horrible impact on inequality. Is the IFC concerned with inequality?
Of course.
And how? But what are you doing to mitigate against that?
I don't see creation of 1,500 jobs as contributing to inequality in any way. Right? These people, let's take an example. You walk into a Shangri-La. What is the people who come and service you, the hospitality professionals? They're the middle class of Myanmar. This is the part of the country that's actually going to give purchasing power to Myanmar. If you tell me that creating jobs for those people is contributing to inequality, then I have to respectfully disagree. For us, all our business, whether it's infrastructure, as I explained, access to finance, at the end of the day is to create a private sector, right? We deal with the private sector. If I could go out and give grants to rural farmers, that's something that the bank does, that's something that a lot of the donors do. But for us, our mission is to work with the private sector and create jobs.
So if there are any misconceptions about the IFC and its role in Myanmar that you feel need clarifying, please take this opportunity to do so.
Yeah, Alex, I appreciate this opportunity. And real estate is not what the IFC is all about, to be very honest. We do real estate investment, we do hotels, and it's a part of our strategy, but it's not reflective of what our strategy is. As I said, a lot of the work that we're doing here is in sectors which are broad-based, on the agricultural side, on the infrastructure side, on the access to finance side. which is extremely broad-based and which will give a huge boost to the economy in the coming years. And the other aspect of IFC's work, which is somewhat lost in translation, is the advisory platform. 70% of my team is advisory. They're working on investment climate reform. They're working on the Myanmar Business Forum, which is creating a platform for the private sector of Myanmar, local and international, to have a dialogue with the government of Myanmar. A lot of the work on the access to finance side is like we're working with the central bank to develop a credit bureau framework. That is massive for SMEs itself. My final word to the audience is the IFC is here to stay. It's here to make a lot of investment. We're committed to putting a lot of capital in the country over the next few years, and we're confident that we will make a big difference to the people of Myanmar.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alex.